Right, so let me get this recording. All right, so I think last time we pretty much finished things. I'm gonna turn off the renderer for that thing again because that was just sitting out there. Because I want to move on to something else today, just to kind of, I don't know, put a button on this thing and say this is good enough to go out the door. So let's, do I hide this? Okay. I am sharing, right? Yep. All right. So let me see where we left off. I know we had gotten our victory going to the death scene, and then when we come back, we had gotten our guy just put into the middle of the room. And then I think we were kind of turning on, turning off, whether they could trigger a monster right there at the end. So yeah, so right now they can we're in an infinite death fight loop where the player is throwing haymakers. All right, so what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to turn off that initial fight until they hit center. If you remember correctly, way back when we first got it to the point where our player kind of stops, we have this this thing called center, which has a box collider on it. Well, I gotta admit people. All right, there we go. So what we really want to do is we want to turn off the ability to get into a fight until they bump into center again, and then turn that ability back on. That way, on their way into a room, as they're going up to center, they don't accidentally get into a fight down here. That's kind of the point here. All right, so what we want to do is we want to go ahead, and I don't remember if we already added this thing to our master data. I know we were kind of doing it right at the end of class, but let me do this. Oh, and by the way, on Friday we will tie up any kind of loose ends, but we'll also talk about the final exam and kind of go through and tell you what's important, what's not important. I do anticipate being on back in the classroom on Friday, even though it's kind of weird because my back surgery is actually Friday morning, which is a bigger surgery than I'm having today. But today requires me wearing flip-flops. So, so I kind of made the decision not to wear flip-flops to work and instead just teach from the house. So anyways, you get to see me after back surgery on Friday. So I may or may not be in a good mood. I guess we'll find out. But I don't need to wear flip-flops that day. So it's the deal. All right. So that's the current plan. I'll maybe keep an eye on Slack just in case that pivots, but I think that's going to be the plan. All right. So we had already added this little variable here. I don't think we're using it yet. So, we decided, okay, well, we can get into a fight initially. All right. So we want to go into our logic where we're potentially triggering a fight. And as soon as we get into a fight, we want to go ahead and turn that can get into a fight off. That way, when that fight is over and we start entering the next room, we don't accidentally get into another fight until we hit center and then turn that back on. Okay, so let's go to our code for where we're potentially getting into a fight. Where is we have like a monster trigger somewhere, right? That's my update exits. Are we doing it on the monster trigger side? Here's this dot enable fights. All right. So inside of our monster trigger, so we have a little invisible thing that when we bump into that on our way out of a room, and as of right now, on our way into a room, we potentially trigger a fight, even though right now it's always 100% chance of getting into a fight just for our debugging purposes. So we really want to say two different things. If fights are currently enabled, if you remember, that was just something we put in there for us to be able to conveniently turn on and off fights from Unity. So that guy's more of just a developer convenience. At some point, you could take that out, but it's not hurting anything as long as you don't turn that checkbox off over in Unity. But we're going to go ahead and say, and master data dot can get into a fight. So both of those things need to be true in order for us to even see if we get into a fight inside here. All right. Now what we're going to say is if we do get into a fight though, so that is if the chance to fight is less than or equal to the chance to get into a fight, this is where we're actually starting that fight. I'm going to go ahead and set my can get into a fight equal to false. That way, whenever that fight's over, presuming we won, and we start heading back into the room, when we hit the monster trigger on our way into the room, can get into a fight is currently false. Remember, this is really saying can get into a fight is equivalent to true. This is redundant. This is asking is true equal to true or is false equal to true. So you don't actually need the double equal to true here since this is already a Boolean value. So if this guy is true, it'll be true. If this guy is false, it'll be false. And we have an and here. So both sides need to be true in order for the whole thing to be true. So if we get inside this if statement, we'll go ahead and flip the can get into a fight to false. So that as when the fight's over and we win and we start wandering back into the room and we hit the monster trigger on the way in, we won't get into this if statement because the can get into a fight is currently equal to false. All right. Then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and make sure we turn this guy back on when we hit center. So the same place where we're currently stopping. So that's how we get our guy. He's moving into the room and then he stops when he hits center. So I'll go back to our player controller. I forgot what I was doing there, but it's misspelled anyways. So let's just take out that print statement. I think we were just testing something. So here we are on trigger enter. So when we enter center, this is when we, oh, I already actually put this back in there. So can get into fight is already set to true. So the only thing we didn't do at the end of class last time is we didn't put that logic into the monster trigger to prevent us from actually getting into a fight around this variable. So we flip that guy back to true whenever we hit the center point in the room. That way, when we do leave the room, we potentially can get into a fight again. Now, you could decide for your game whether you want there to always be a chance that your guy gets into a fight, whether you're entering a room or leaving a room. That's kind of up to you, but this is just some examples of using Boolean variables. A lot of times these are maybe called flags to prevent an action or another action, that type of thing. Okay. So in any case, on our way into the room, you can't get into a fight. You're leaving a room, you can get into a fight because as soon as we hit center, we turn it back on, yada, yada, yada. So now we should be able to get into a room. Well, we should be able to get into a fight, win the fight, and then get back into the next room, letting us traverse our dungeon. Uh-oh. What didn't I save? What didn't I save? I think I didn't save monster trigger. All right. So we did that. Now I can go and we'll get into a fight again. Let's prove we can get into the room again. All right. So now we're going down the hall. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, so everything seems to be working reasonably well. Maybe we have a bug or something in here if we really tried to mess with it, but let's call this pretty good. Now, Once we actually get into these fights, we are going to have, once we turn off the ability for our player to basically not get hit and throwing big heavy haymakers where he always wins, presumably as you're going through the game, you're going to be getting hurt even if you survive the fight. So maybe you're half dead at the end of a fight. Well, the idea is in a lot of these games, the next fight you get into, you're still half dead. So you're not quite as capable of winning the next fight as you were the previous fight. But maybe you take some time to kind of gain your strength back. And again, different games have kind of different rules associated with it. But when you come out of a fight, let's just say that you've lost 20% of your hit points. All right. Now you can just keep traveling along, go into the next room, get into your next fight, and you just only have 80% of your total hit points, and hopefully you win again. But you also could just chill and not do any more movement so you don't accidentally get into another fight and maybe have those hit points kind of come back. All right. So what do you think? How might you accomplish something like this? Any ideas? Make sure you unmute yourself if you're throwing an idea out there. We got nothing. Killing me. Well, let me ask you this. How quickly should our hit points come back? Maybe we get some number of hit points back every 3 seconds, something like that, just to not make it ridiculous. All right, so over a 3-second period, maybe we get a hit point back. So every 3 seconds, we get a hit point back. Let's just say when we're not in a fight. Okay, but we don't get to have any more hit points than our maximum number of hit points. All right. So we need to go back into player and revisit how we're actually handling our current hit points. So let's go into, actually, we're doing it inside of inhabitant, right? So inside of inhabitant, we're getting our initial hit points created. And then we also have the ability to take damage where we're subtracting from hit points. So given the fact that, well, as we have it set up right now, we once we lose hit points, we really can't get them back because we don't remember what was our maximum number of hit points. So we really probably want to have another variable in here. Maybe max HP. And we'll set this dot max HP equal to this dot HP. So when we first create that inhabitant, their hit points and their maximum hit points are both the same. All right. Now, the idea is we'll never adjust maximum hit points. That just kind of gives us that number that, as we get healthy again, the most number of hit points we can get back to is what our original max was. So the only number we're actually adjusting up or down is our normal hit points. Okay. So we built into an inhabitant the ability now to remember what our original maximum hit points were. We already have the ability to take damage and things like that, which hurt our hit points. So why don't we go ahead and create another function here? We'll say heal. Let's call it heal HP. And we'll have this guy take in an amount just in case we want to have the ability to heal for more than just a default value of 1. Maybe as you keep going with this game, you decide to have, health potions or something like that, where your guy can be 80% dead and he can drink a health potion and poof, he's back to maximum health, something like that. All right. So for heal HP, what we want to do is, well, at the end of the day, we're going to say this dot HP plus equals amount. So we're going to add hit points to, or add whatever was the healing to our current number of hit points. And remember, this is the same thing as saying this dot HP is equal to this dot HP plus amount. So this is just our compound operator. If you hate that look, you could just rewrite it like that if you prefer that. All right. But now we want to, if we just leave it alone here, we have now the possibility of, having a guy that currently has 8 out of 10 hit points, healing him for 30, and now he has 38 hit points out of 10. We probably don't want that. So we're going to ask the question here, if this dot HP is greater than this dot max HP, then we'll go ahead and set this dot HP equal to this dot max HP. So the most we'll ever let them heal is up to their maximum number of hit points in our current game. All right. Now keep in mind, we're not actually using this ability yet. All we've done is built in a couple of things into our inhabitant class. We're still working with our model. An MVC, this is our data under the hood here. So we've taught inhabitants how to remember what their maximum number of hit points were. We've also taught them to take in an amount of healing and apply it to their hit points, making sure that they don't go over their original maximum number of hit points. Okay, we've only given them that ability. We haven't used it yet. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to use this ability at some level. Okay, so having said that, does anybody, now that we have added a little bit, does anybody have a suggestion on how we go ahead and give a player 1 hit point every 3 seconds while they are not in a fight? So it's something that's only going to happen inside of our dungeon room scene, and our player gets healed for some amount, but every 3 seconds. Any ideas? Just the audience participation is enthralling.
We create like a coroutine in the player controller?
Okay, you could create a coroutine in the player controller. What would you have that coroutine do?
I'd have it wait for 3 seconds and then add another hit point and have it pause when we enter a fight.
Okay, I mean, you could do something like that. So you're suggesting maybe have a coroutine and maybe yield. So it's kind of happening in the background. It's not blocking us at all. Yield for 3 seconds, then add 1 to the player, and then call that coroutine again. Just kind of get the ball rolling again. And so we're always just kind of waiting for 3 seconds, healing for 1, and then doing that again. So let's go and look at that. We'll maybe talk about maybe some of the challenges with it, keeping in mind there are different ways we can accomplish this this job. But I kind of like that solution. Again, we're solving problems using the tools we have laying in front of us. We do want to be a little bit careful of just having coroutines all over the place, but I don't think this causes a major issue for us at this point. Maybe another approach some of you would have taken that's related to something we've done prior is maybe use the update method to go ahead and do something with time delta, how much time has changed since the last how much time has changed since our last call to update. And once that hits 3 seconds, go ahead and add a hit point and reset that time that we're waiting. And I think you'll see why that maybe would have made a little bit more sense initially, but let's go ahead and go down this path of using a coroutine first. So I'm going to, let me hide the meeting controls again. So let's go into player controller. And I think we already have some coroutines dancing around in here somewhere, don't we? No, we don't. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and steal a coroutine from, maybe we got it in our referee. Just so I have the right starting point here. All right. So we'll put it down here. We're in player controller. I'll go ahead and create this guy. call this guy maybe player heal, something like that. All right. And so when this guy first starts, we'll go ahead and wait for 3 seconds, like you suggested. And then we want to go ahead and have our player heal. Now, where is our player currently located from a player controller's perspective? Again, we want to remember that we currently kind of have this sandwich built, right? Under the hood, we've kept track of an instance of player that actually represents the data or the model associated with our player on the screen. On the screen, we have our view that is the visual representation of our player. And then we have the controller, which is our scripts. So when we heal a player, what we actually want to do is we want to make changes to the model for that player. And that model we're currently keeping track of is inside of master data. What do we call it? P? Probably kind of a crappy name for that guy. You know what? I'm going to try something here just to show you. I assume it's built into Visual Studio. So I'm going to highlight that P here. I'm looking for something called refactor. I wonder if rename will let me do it. Yeah. Okay. So notice that I just right-clicked on it. I said rename. I want to go ahead and change that to be called the player instead of P, because P is maybe a little bit problematic. Now, I'm not 100% confident it did this in the other files, so let's go ahead and check that. Where else might we use it? Do we use it up here? Well, actually, we can check it pretty quickly by just going in here and seeing if we have any errors. Looks like the guy's working just fine. All right. So when you take the CSC250 class, which many of you will take, actually, are you in that class now? Or are you taking that class in the fall? Software engineering. I think you take it in the fall. In any case, when you take that class, you learn about some of these different things. And we have this thing called refactoring, which is what we just did, where we made a change to our code to make it make a little bit more sense. Our old variable name of just saying P for player was kind of a little bit indescriptive, undescriptive, not descriptive. Let's go with not descriptive. It was not a descriptive variable name. So I wanted to go ahead and change it. Well, rather than me having to go through and find it in all these different places, a tool like Visual Studio, an integrated development environment, an IDE, allows you, some things we'll call it refactor. So when I right-clicked on this, I was looking for a refactor thing somewhere. Oh, here, quick actions and refactorings. Let's see what this guy pops up with. Oh, we can actually turn it into a field instead of or a property instead of a field, which is a C# thing. Okay. But in any case, when I hit rename, it went ahead and highlighted a whole bunch of things at once, showing me that the change I'm making right here is being made globally throughout this this namespace, which is like my local package or local folder type stuff. All right. So that means wherever I used P before, it now says the player, master data.the player. All right. In any case, this is the dude that is our instance of player that we would be making changes to. And he's owned inside of master data. So inside of our player controller, every 3 seconds, I might go ahead and I might say master data dot the player dot heal HP for 1. Okay. And that'll go ahead and heal it for 1. Now, I could, put this in some sort of loop or something like that, but we've kind of seen that when you throw things in infinite loops, things get a little wonky for us. So we're not going to do that. Instead, what we're going to do is we are going to then start this coroutine. player heal from inside here, which is kind of like, let's call it indirect recursion. Recursion is where a function calls itself from within itself. So in this case, the my player heal thing starts, waits 3 seconds, heals the player for 1, and then calls itself. All right, rather than us creating loops inside of there, which we've seen previously can cause problems inside of threads. We probably could avoid the problem here by since we have this yield in here, so we probably could put this inside of a while loop and it would be okay. But this logic makes reasonable enough sense, and it lets us practice the concept of recursion a little bit. All right, now somebody needs to get the ball rolling for this guy. All right, where every 3 seconds he is healing. So that means maybe inside of start, when we first go ahead and get the ball rolling here for our player, we go ahead and we say start coroutine, player heal. So we'll start that once to get the ball rolling. It will then wait 3 seconds, heal for 1 hit point up to a maximum number of hit points, since we wrote that logic into our player. And then it'll start the coroutine again. So in perpetuity, it's doing this. Okay. Now, let's see, am I going to be able to show this as a problem? Well, let me just show it this way. Let me make sure I have master data saved as well. Yeah. So go back in here. So here on our dungeon screen, we have our player, and our player has the player controller associated with it. Inside of our fight scene, oh, here, it's not contain. Where's it complaining about? It looks like it did not change it in our other functions. So, oh, it did though. Changed it to the player there. Changed it to the player there, so it did everything I wanted it to do. I'm gonna run this real quick. Where is my inhabitant? We wrote the heal thing inside of inhabitant. Yeah, we wrote it as a public function, heal HP. So all of this saved. Just hit save all. Okay. One of my files I had not saved. I'm guessing it was inhabitant. All right, so what I want to show here is inside of our dungeon room, we have our player, and our player has our player controller associated with it. Inside of our fight scene, we also have our player, and oh, we did not associate our player controller in that one. So this will work the way it is. What I was thinking we had is we had our player controller hanging off the player in both rooms. If that was the case, whether we were currently inside of a fight or we were just wandering around the dungeon, when we started wandering through here, the guy, well, when that screen started and our player controller spun up inside of the start on our player controller, we would have gone ahead and started healing. Okay. Now, because of that, we would have actually healed during our fight. Again, maybe not the end of the world. Maybe you decide that is how I want my game to work. But as of right now, our player controller is actually only active inside of our dungeon room, which is when we want our guy to heal. So presumably he will be okay. And we'll be healing. So let's go ahead and test this real quick. And then we're going to give ourselves a visual way of handling this. All right, so I'm going to go into inhabitant here, and I want to go ahead and make my, actually I do it inside a player, right? Yeah, this is where I set his armor class and his damage to 1,000. So we're going to go ahead and make him a little bit less invincible. Well, significantly less invincible, where now it's maybe a toss-up. What we want to show here is we want our player to get hit a little bit, but not actually die, and probably win the game. So we'll go ahead and leave it like this. But we want him to be hurt just a little bit so that we can actually see his hit points come back in between fights. All right, so go back to our dungeon room. All right. Did he take any damage? Okay, he's down to 6. Took some damage. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and wait like 3 seconds. Go this way. Okay, he's up to 8, so he's healed some. Now, if I wait a little bit longer, actually, let's just do it here. Well, he's only up to 9. Now he's taking a hit. All right, so we'll go ahead and just sit here for a second and let him go ahead and heal to full. All right, I think he should be full. Yep. Okay, so now we have him getting hit points back. Now, one thing we probably want to be able to do is we probably want to have a way of visually seeing his hit points. Now, based on what we know up to this point, we can go ahead and we can put a canvas back here where it just shows his hit points in the upper corner, so we see the player's current life and see that moving. Wouldn't be a major deal. We could set that up pretty easily. But what I think we want to do is give ourselves a little bit of an extra thing here, where we want to create a kind of a health bar type thing. And you can do this however you want. Actually, built into Unity, there's kind of a way you can accomplish this, but I want to kind of roll back old school. If you kind of think back to older fighting games, a lot of times the health bars look like these would be like a rectangle and have a whole bunch of individual little boxes inside of it, and those boxes would either disappear or come back as you took damage, rather than it being this smooth scale type thing. So we're going to design something that's a little bit more old school. All right, but what we want to have it do is we want it to follow our player. So just as a example here, I'm just going to create something on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to create an empty, no, actually I'm going to create a cube. All right, so here's my cube, and I'm just going to call this guy a health bar. I'm going to drag him off to the side here, and I'm going to resize him a little bit. We're going to make him kind of skinnier. All right, maybe like that. And I'm going to put him over here to the side. We're going to make sure he does not have a box collider on it, so we don't want him bumping into things. Okay. Now, if I run the game right now, that guy's just sitting there. He's not doing anything. Blah, blah, blah. All right. Now we want him to follow our player wherever our player is. All right. So give me I'm going to ask, give me 2 ways we can accomplish that. Give me the most obvious way that we've already had work in our game so far. How do we make this health bar follow our player?
We could attach a follow script.
Yep. So we can teach it how to follow by giving this guy the follow script. And the follow script expects us to give it the game object we want it to follow. So we can just go ahead and drag the player into there. All right. Oh, except now it's exactly positioned directly underneath him. He is there, but we've set his position right underneath him. Okay. Now we could go ahead and make some adjustments, and we can actually see that that's the case if I do this. I'll just make the health bar a lot longer. So you see it's still with him. It didn't just disappear. Okay, but we don't want our health bar to be that big. Now we can certainly go in and we can write some code that keeps our health bar at some sort of offset, so it's not directly underneath our player, but instead it's off to the side or something like that. All right. Well, but how else could we do this? Any other new inventions you could come up with for how we can make our health bar follow this? I'm going to go ahead and remove this component. So we could actually take advantage of Unity here and work with this hierarchy. So if I make that health bar a child of player, now his position is offset relative to player. So as player moves, so does that health bar. Right now, first of all, it kind of looked cool as it came rolling into the room. Okay, we noticed that this guy is also rotating with the player, because remember, our player is sitting on top of a sphere. So he kind of rolls smoothly throughout the world here. All right. So we can we probably don't want him to roll. We want him to stay flat. So you can click on health bar here, and you can go into let's see. I think we'll have to add a rigid body to it in order to put the lock on it. So I'm going to go ahead and add a rigid body to my health bar. I'm going to turn off gravity for it. But now what we can do is we can freeze the rotation on that rigid body, which will keep him from spinning around. One second. Back to this guy. I already have the box collider off. We have gravity turned off. I think I need to turn on his kinematic. But he's still rotating. I have his rotation set. Oh, maybe he isn't actually rotating. The player is rotating. I don't like that at all. Why does this not keep it from spinning? Is he actually spinning? Looks like he's spinning. But I think realistically, he is holding on to his current position and not rolling with I think he's not rotating himself. I think he is positioned to the right of the sphere. And as the sphere rolls, he is just staying in that same position relative to the sphere. So when we lock his rotation, this is related to what I'm talking about here. So because we made him a child of player, this guy's rotation now and position is relative to player. So when we roll player forward, let's say 50%, that health bar, his rotation is still at 0, 0, 0. Because his rotation relative to player is still 0, 0, 0 because player has rotated forward. All right, so we maybe don't want that to be the way that that guy works. So maybe the follow script ends up being the better solution. We could certainly write a script here that basically keeps the but then it's no better than the follow script. It would keep the rotation as a complement to the rotation of the player. So as the player rotated forward, it would rotate relative to the player backwards to constantly stay at 90 degrees to the player. So we can make it work, but I think the thing we want to see here is when I move this health bar underneath the player, his transform is now something that is relative to player, not relative to the scene. Does that make some sense? All right. So it gives us the ability to have, I guess something follow along with something else without having major issues. If you consider if this guy wasn't a sphere, and instead, we can go to player and go to his rigid body, and we can freeze his rotation on X for the player. He's not going to move really good anymore. But you see how it didn't actually rotate anymore? So watch the health bar here. So the health bar is no longer rotating because the player also is not rotating forward. Because I froze the player's rotation through his rigid body, I froze it across the x-axis. So now he's no longer rolling like a tennis ball or something like that. Now we're shoving it, but he's not rolling. He's just getting pushed along the floor. All right, so we could still make this work and just shove him out of the room a little harder. But because we originally chose a sphere for our player, which, maybe we're having some regrets for that now, but that's what we did. He moves the smoothest if we let him roll. We probably could let him hover and then move 2 positions instead of shoving him. So we could change the way our player moves. Because right now, what we're effectively doing is we're using physics on the rigid body, and we're just shoving him down the hall and letting him roll out. And we're just saying, oh, that looks good to us. When maybe the reality is we could have done it by just telling the player to move from point A to point B, where we're physically moving his transform, not necessarily applying any physics to him. Okay, but that's not the way we did it. So as it stands right now, his health bar will spin with him. I'm gonna go ahead and save this. Go into Keynote, and we're gonna have our last homework assignment. I'll steal this guy. All right, so give our player a health bar that follows him around on the dungeon room scene that constantly shows his current health status. The health bar should be made up of 10 small cubes, where each cube represents 10% of the player's HP. So if a player had a max of 10 HP and currently had 9 left, it would show 9 of the 10 cubes. The health bar should always show the current state of the player's health, which means it should increase as the player, let's just say as the player heals. All right, and let's see, I'm gonna put up get desktop. Ready for final homework. Commit to main. Push origin. All right, questions about what I'm asking you to do for your last assignment? Comments, concerns, bribes? Chat questions. I think I do have all the code saved. Yeah, it's all saved. Okay, I will see you guys hopefully in the classroom on Friday, pending that I can walk and stuff, but I think I'll probably be fine. All right, so I will see you then. I'll put this homework assignment up, and the code is already updated on GitHub.